Above the net here, and the Brooklyn Nets 2026 NBA Las Vegas Summer League has finally come to the end, with the Nets winning 2 games to 2 losses, with their most recent game being an 100-83 game loss to the Houston Rockets. And with this conclusion, I think the one word that best describes the Brooklyn Nets Summer League is sobering, but not necessarily in a bad way. I think that it's sobering because it showed that the Brooklyn Nets' near dominance this summer league wasn't necessarily sustainable, but at the same time, it was legitimate. There are still going to be realistic growing pains to this roster, but there were enough standouts that made you feel like the chemistry and core that the Nets currently have can be one of the better younger cores of the NBA landscape, basically. I do want to first say that even though the Nets lost 2 of their games, I do think that those losses aren't necessarily the full picture. The first loss against the Atlanta Hawks, at least I believe it was the Atlanta Hawks, was a close game, and that was a game where neither of the Nets' 2 key guys, Egor Demin or Mikel Brown Jr., were actually playing. Both Demin and Brown Jr. were put on rest days, with Demin coming back from a non-invasive procedure to treat his plantar fasciitis that ended his 2025 rookie campaign, and Mikel Brown Jr. was coming back from a lingering back issue that was impacting him during his 1 season in college. The fact that the Nets still almost won that game without either of their primary playmakers really is a testament to just how consistent the chemistry is between players like Drake Powell, Danny Wolf, Ben Surratt, Channing Johnson, and just kind of where they are right now. The loss to Houston is a bit more unfortunate because they did not have a first round pick on this roster. However, the 31st overall pick, Bruce Thornton, has been tearing it up in Summer League. He's at 6'2", and I believe he's around 190 to 210 pounds, somewhere around there. And he just looks like a beast. He gives me a lot of like a more athletic version of Brunson. He knows where to stop. He knows where he wants to get his defender going. He knows how to draw the foul. He knows how to kind of command the offense and be a good leader. And I think those are really good signs for any team to find on their roster. I'm not saying that the guy will be a Jalen Brunson type player, but as a New Yorker, I'm definitely more of a Nets fan, but I do love the Knicks. I've grown up watching both teams. And as a New Yorker, knowing what Jalen Brunson has done, what he can do, and where he has been thanks to the 2026 NBA Finals, having a guy like Bruce Thornton, I hope he could stay around the league and can develop into a perennial, at least all-star. But going back to the Brooklyn Nets, I think that Houston kind of out-hustled them defensively, getting in between them on the passing lanes, messing them up, kind of just in the long run, and you love that kind of performance, right? If you're the Rockets. But at the same time, as a Nets fan, I'm really grateful that Brown Jr. and Demin had to face that kind of adversity, and for the rest of the Nets rookies. And that's primarily because, yes, you're not going to have that hounding full court defense on really most NBA teams you're going to be facing throughout the regular season. But come playoffs, when things get more tighter, the physicality becomes more apparent, you're going to need to handle those kinds of situations. Areas where people are going to be in your face, you're going to not necessarily get the easiest looks, you're not going to have the whistle blown in your favor all the time. Passing lanes are going to be kind of messed up. Shots aren't going to be getting off that easily. It's really important for Brown Jr. and Demin to kind of understand how to navigate that. And they did. I think in the Rockets game, Demin put up 21 points and Brown Jr. was able to put up 14. I don't know about their playmaking, but judging by the game, I wouldn't say it was anything to really write home about. Their shots were probably not the most efficient, but the fact that they could still kind of navigate and figure themselves out, especially Demin nearing the fourth quarter, it was very important for them to kind of learn. And these are going to be things that these guys are going to be learning for the next couple of seasons. And I think that it is very important that they're learning these early on because it is going to really stress test the design philosophy and core beliefs of Sean Marks and the Brooklyn Nets front office. Brooklyn, I feel, is trying to merge what made the 2024 Celtics really good and merge what led to the rise in the Oklahoma City Thunder and San Antonio Spurs. Brooklyn has been building a team that is very Eurocentric in play style, where there's a lot of pacing, there's a lot of spacing, there's a lot of passing, and a lot of size that can lead to good defense. This is very reminiscent to the 2024 Boston Celtics, where everyone on the team outside of maybe their center, can space the floor, can pass the ball, can, get that secondary hockey assist, and play hounding defense around a 6'9" kind of primary option. And for the Brooklyn Nets, they basically built that, Egor Demin or Mikel Porter Jr., that's the 6'9", 6'10" kind of focal point of their team currently. But they're doing like a diet version of that where you have several guys at several positions who can play make, who can space, who can kind of shot create for themselves. Their natural size leads to them being more potentially better defensively. We saw that last season in January where the Nets had a defensive rating better than the Oklahoma City Thunder, but they weren't able to really capitalize it afterwards, whether that was an issue with the fact that they had many small guards like Nolan Traore and Cam Thomas, or if they were just actively trying to tank once Dwoman's injuries really caught up to him. What I'm getting at is that the Brooklyn Nets are trying to build like the Boston Celtics, and that leads to issues like the Boston Celtics, like what we saw in the 2025 playoffs and 2026 playoffs, where if you're going to be very three-point focused, spacing focused, you're going to have to live and die by shooting variance, regardless of how good your spacers are. The Nets have three really good spacers in Mikel Porter Jr., Egor Demin, and Mikel Brown Jr. But again, these guys can still have off nights. All three of them can have off nights at the same time. And once none of them are shooting, once the defense is really perimeter focused, you're going to see those struggles become more apparent. That's just another byproduct of the pace that the Nets play in as well, where yes, when everything's clicking together, it's the most beautiful game you've ever seen. But when it's more often than not going to be the best decision makings at such a fast pace, you're going to have situations where it's going to be a lot of turnovers, a lot of rough nights, and you're just kind of hoping that the players develop out of that. Pivoting a bit to the OKC Thunder and San Antonio Spurs kind of style, the Nets have developed a treasure trove of assets that they can build around. Granted, unlike the Spurs and Thunder, I don't think their assets are as good, and with the new draft lottery, I don't think that their situation is as ideal. However, for several seasons, you're going to see the Nets look for more NBA-ready, contention-ready, playoff-ready pieces, older pieces that can kind of supplement their current foundation and core. Maybe they look for another generational great if Dwoman and Mikel Brown Jr. aren't the actual foundational pieces. But the Nets are basically primed where they could either make the right trade, they can rebuild their roster on cheap rookie deals, or some other kind of trade or asset that gives them maximum flexibility as they continue to grow. This does lead to another issue with the Brooklyn Nets, and that's just kind of the financial outlook. The Nets have about 7 first-round picks within the 2025 and 2026 NBA draft. Each of these players can make anywhere from 25 to 30% of the cap space on their rookie extensions if, they are commanding that much money. And I think a lot of these players, if developed correctly, can reach that level. So there is going to be a lot of issues once 2029 to 2030 comes around where the Nets will be actively looking to shop some of their pieces. I think Brown Jr. and Dwoman are going to be safe, but guys like Drake Powell, Danny Wolf, Ben Surratt, Joshua Jefferson, and Nolan Traore are all possibly going to be on the chopping block. And that can be really unfortunate if these players develop really well because you're basically giving any of the other 29 teams a really good piece that you just can't afford anymore. Granted, I do think that a lot of the players outside of Dwoman and Brown Jr. have enough question marks where it's very likely that their rookie extensions can come and they might have to take the qualifying offer or they may have to take a discounted extension and wait for when their veteran extensions can kick in. And ideally, that's when you look at like the OKC Thunder, you see a lot of their guys were on rookie extensions that didn't kick in for a year or two, so they were able to kind of play with house money for a bit. You're seeing a similar thing with the San Antonio Spurs, where because Wemby has not only just started getting into his extension, but is also taking a $50 million discount, you're seeing that they're able to kind of play around with house money and open things up for when they have to extend Dylan Harper or Stephon Castle, or even sign another superstar or good piece around them. I know they signed Tobias Harris, but I think Spurs are in a prime position where they can really retool the roster in their current state. Unfortunately for the Nets, they don't necessarily have the talent of the Spurs or Thunder. I do believe Dwoman and Brown Jr. are franchise cornerstones. I think they can become first options, both of them, if their development continues this greatly. But I also think that, the ceiling of the Brooklyn Nets right now is more hypothetical and potential based than what's actually there. I think they have a solid floor just because of MPJ and Julius Randle. But with those two being kind of the primary focal points of the offense, you're going to see a pretty low ceiling until decisions are made on the rest of the Nets rookies. That is another thing to look at. I think Dwellman and Mikel Brown Jr. are going to be players that do really well when the offense isn't prioritizing them. I think Dwellman and Mikel Brown Jr. can be some of the best third and fourth options of any NBA team ever. However, I do think that it also can hurt them if MPJ and Julius Randle are commanding so much focus of the opposing side. Again, like the Houston Rockets game, you want to see how these players do under pressure, how they're doing when they are getting faced with rough play, with their shot not falling, with their passes not connecting. It's a much needed learning curve for pieces that you really want to trust for the long run. I think those two are the players that no matter what are going to get that 25 to 30% max deal and stay on Brooklyn's roster if they can continue to work out. And I think that one of my favorite takeaways of the Summer League is that I think Brown Jr. and Dwellman are a very phenomenal complementary piece. I don't know how genuine their friendship is yet, but they have been making efforts to make sure that they are connected, that they are meeting, they are kind of on the same page, that they're enjoying their time together. I think both players do really good off the ball, on the ball, creating. One of my favorite things I remember from this Summer League, the two plays that kind of stand out to me was the first game against the Knicks, where Dwellman's first three came from a Brown Jr. assist, and Brown Jr.'s first three came from a Dwellman assist. I think that is a very fun kind of connecting piece. Was it against the Knicks or was it against the Warriors in the California Classic? I don't remember, but it was a very fun play. And I also really liked this transition play that they had where I believe it was Brown pass to Dwellman, pass to Wolf. It was such a fluid motion. Everyone was kind of engaged. All three of these players are high IQ players when it comes to passing and playmaking, so they understood kind of where they had to be. I think on paper, the Nets are in a very good space. And for this last part of the video, I want to look at the 8 rookies and sophomores that the Nets have drafted within the past 2 years. 5 from the 2025 NBA draft class, and 3 from this year in 2026. Starting off with Egor Demin, I do believe that he is currently the best player the Nets have. He has shown through his 3 games of the Summer League and throughout the California Classic that he is genuinely a 20-point per game type of player. I don't think he's going to be averaging that this regular season because, again, he's going to have limited touches, limited roles, a shorter leash just because MPJ and Randle are going to be kind of the main pieces of the Brooklyn Nets offense, the main creators, the main spacers. Dwellman is going to be expected to be the connecting piece. However, I do think with his new increased weight, his newfound athleticism, and kind of his improved health, he's going to be a 12 to 16 point per game scorer who can show a lot of upside. His 3-point ball hasn't been falling. However, he has been taking a lot more spot-up shots, a lot more contested shots. He also has just been taking a larger volume of shots. He was already doing 39% on 6 attempts or over 6 attempts last season. So him doing it like at 8 to 12 attempts this Summer League, like there's a reason why his shot wasn't really falling. And I'm pretty sure Dwellman is going to find that quality, that rhythm again. Mikel Brown Jr. definitely has proven to me that I think he is a great cornerstone piece. I do think that he needs a little bit more weight. I think like 5 to 10 pounds is really all he needs to become something elite. I definitely thought he was more 6'3", 6'4", because I believe he's like 6'3.5" without shoes. But kind of watching him throughout the games, he really is a 6'5" prospect. I just think that because he's only 190 pounds, he is getting kind of shoved around a bit. I do think that he takes a bit too many flashy passes and deep threes, but you want the kid to be confident in those things because those are some of the plays that you're going to need if you're going to really want to elevate yourselves in deeper playoff runs. I do believe that Brown Jr. within this season or next season will be able to put up a few 20-point game performances. I do think that in the regular season, he's probably going to be anywhere from like 10 to 15 points. Like Dwellman, it really just depends on how Brown Jr. does in a lineup where he isn't one of the 2 primary offensive options and how he can kind of move around more NBA-ready defenses. I'm going to pivot to Danny Wolf because I do think that some of the bigger issues I had with Wolf, whether it was injuries or kind of his, not necessarily lower IQ, but more how his IQ translated to faster pace of play, wasn't always the highest on me, but I'm very high on Danny Wolf. I'm very invested in his stock. I do think that he's shown that he can make the right plays. He has a very vocal and veteran presence compared to his other rookies and sophomores. I think he's going to be a good passer. I do find it very interesting how good he is on the perimeter. Again, 1-3 for every 3 attempts isn't necessarily going to be game-changing for the Brooklyn Nets. Sorry, I had to cut off there because I think my audio was starting to get a little bit messed up, so we're just going to have to deal with it. But yeah, I do believe that Danny Wolf is a phenomenally good perimeter player for being 6'11". His spacing is just going to be kind of average, role player good for a big. I don't think he's going to be like a stretch 5, but shooting a 3 every 3 attempts is basically what you need from this kid. Nolan Traore unfortunately didn't play in the summer league because he's still recovering from injury. However, I do believe that if his productivity from last season is to be believed, I do believe he's a very good spark plug piece that can kind of be integral to the Nets lineup. Unfortunately, I do think that Traore is going to be one of the players that the Nets end up losing in the 2029 free agency. I think they're going to have to sign and trade him to somewhere. I don't necessarily know where. However, I could see him anywhere from like Miami to Boston to even Houston. I don't know why. I've been thinking about like a lot of these Nets players like in like a Houston Rockets jersey. Maybe because the Rockets need a lot of guard play, but yeah, I think Traore is going to be a phenomenal third string. I almost said third string center. He's going to be a phenomenal third string point guard. He's going to be a great 6-man, probably a perennial 6-man option if his development is there. Saroff in a similar boat. I think he's a great connective piece. His jumper, I'm starting to believe in a little bit more. I don't think it's going to be ever like 35%. But again, when you're just looking for a guy who can space the floor, make those fast decisions, like he's kind of the in-between of Traore and Woman. That's how I've always felt about him. Like take the averages of those two. And that's not necessarily to discredit him. I'm just saying that where Saroff's strengths are is as a connective piece. I think he's finding his role, and that is really good. Drake Powell is this very interesting player. I always compare his, not necessarily his ceiling to Kawhi Leonard, but kind of his developmental story to Kawhi. I think he was drafted to be defensive first. I think his offense hasn't always looked good. I believed last season it was because he was recovering from, I believe, ankle injuries. This season, the Summer League, I do believe he kind of has a hitch to his shot, which is why he's having such a low kind of scoring nights. However, I do believe in a lot of the other things Drake Powell does. His defensive IQ is perfect. He is an underrated passer. He can, drive the ball in transition. He can make the right plays and the right reads when needed. He's a great point of attack defender, and offensively, I've noticed that he gets to his spaces really well. Again, I think he has a mechanical hitch to his shot, and that's why he's not really converting at the clip you want him to. But it's good enough where I'm very high on the fact that Drake Powell is going to figure it out. Is he going to figure it out long term on the Brooklyn Nets? I don't think so, and it's not because I don't think that he doesn't deserve a max contract. It's again, all these players I think in a best case scenario will figure out their roles after their rookie extensions. If they do it beforehand, the Nets are more likely going to have to trade them just because the Nets feasibly can't pay for all these guys. Joshua Jefferson is a interesting piece to me. I do think he is probably the lowest ceiling of the Nets 7 or 8, and it's not necessarily because I think he's a bad player. I just think that in terms of like his depth, his role, he's not going to get that many opportunities. Maybe like Danny Wolf, he's probably going to put up a 3 every 3 attempts. Unlike Dwoman, who's going to be the Nets secondary creator, Joshua Jefferson's going to probably be like the 3rd, 4th creator for this team. So his assist numbers might barely ever go over 4 assists a game. But again, that's not me being negative on the guy. I do see him being like a 10 to 12 point scorer off the bench. He can definitely play in the starting lineups. He is 6'9" like Dwoman, and when they stand together, it's very funny to look at that team and be like, yeah, there's just like 2 point forwards on this team that like I trust with the ball in their hands. And then, yeah, the last player I would want to talk about is Tyler Bilodeau. He definitely has a good jumper. I don't know how consistent it's going to be or how often he's going to be open or how many opportunities he's going to have. I always liked the Tyler Nickel better, but I do believe Bilodeau is taller than Nickel. Shout out to the Knicks for getting him, though. I think Nickel is going to be a great piece that if the Knicks actually repeat, I think he's going to be a main reason why. But let me actually look up something really quick. Yeah, Tyler Bilodeau is 6'9". Wow, no, that's actually really funny. I didn't realize till this point that they're both named Tyler. But yeah, Tyler Nickel is 6'6", and he's kind of like given Duncan Robinson comps. I don't actually know what Tyler Bilodeau's comps are, but he is like another good kind of spacing type of guy. His lateral quickness is to be questioned, but again, the Nets are looking for just any amount of 6'8" plus guys they can get their hands on right now to space the floor, play defense. And he's just a good piece, yeah. So yeah, the Brooklyn Nets ended their summer league on a sobering note. But sobering notes are a good thing. You don't want to be kind of drunk off of the kind of highs that can come from the summer league without seeing the realistic lows and downturns. The Nets still are a long ways to go before they're in contention, before they're competitive, but the vision that Sean Marks has been building is definitely there. And if you want to see a more in-depth look at one of the games, definitely check out this video here. It's going to be the New York Knicks versus the Brooklyn Nets in Summer League.